Your voices are important and needed. Welcome, everyone, to our motivational writing workshop brought to you by Every Brain Matters and Jennifer's Messengers. We will be sharing our experience of how we, as mothers of children harmed by marijuana, became national speakers. We are telling our stories to help others. My name is Corinne, and I will be speaking today with Sally. I met Sally at a conference many years ago, and we also lobbied together for Sam on Capitol Hill a couple of times. She has been a constant support, as I hope I have been to her. Next slide.
I'd like to share this as something I saw early in my journey in the work that we are doing. This was on a sidewalk somewhere. One day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through now, and it will become part of someone else's survival guide. And it spoke to me at the time, but I didn't realize how really important this was and how true it was and how it develops and develops and develops. And I'd like to tell just a tiny story about Corinne. Very early when I was doing this work, I received a phone call from Luke Niferatos with Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And he said, "Can you be on the Laura Ingraham show?" And I go, "Oh my God, how do you do that?" And he said, "Well, you'd need to get to one of their studios. They're in big cities." And I said, "Well, I live 100 miles away from a big city. I don't know." And he said, "Well, I need somebody right now. So I'm going to call Corinne Gasper. I bet she can do it." So sure enough, I think it was that night, I saw Corinne on TV on the Laura Ingraham show. And I go, "Wow, how did she do that? How can I be ready to say yes the next time?" And over the years, I have been able to do something similar myself. It was Fox and Friends gave me a call, and I was able to be at a studio and do that. And I was surprised at how easy it is, that the people there tell you exactly what to do, what they're doing, and they help you feel at ease. And I was amazed at the technology. It was a fun experience. But that is my example of that one day you'll tell your story and you become part of someone else's survival guide. Corinne was part of my survival guide as I was in the learning process. Corinne is a year or two ahead of me in this whole process. Next slide.
Wow, Sally, I often look up to you, and that was an amazing story. I didn't realize that. But I believe everyone should speak out against the marijuana, as it is detrimental to our world. It harms so many people in so many ways of all ages, and it's because they're misinformed. This industry predominantly preys on children. We must stand up and protect them since our lawmakers are failing us. Many people think, well, if it's legal, it must not be harmful. And others say, it's just pot. What's the problem? Well, nothing could be further from the truth. And we know that there's lots of research and science articles and studies done that show that marijuana is harmful, but somehow they don't get the information necessary to make these informed decisions. And making it legal does not make it less harmful. Next slide, please.
So just a few words about how I ended up here. Whoops, can we go back one slide? I like to call myself Andy's mom. When my son died, my initial grief feelings were, oh my God, my son is gone. My little baby I held in my arms, and he's gone. And I just, the overwhelming immediate feelings of grief had me for a little while, until I started thinking, no, wait a minute, it's not gone. I still have all my memories. I still have some of his belongings that I have. I'm just not going to let him go. He had died by suicide, and he'd been telling us in the months and actually years before his death that he was having trouble with marijuana. And that was a mystery to me. I was in school in the 60s, and marijuana was something very different then, of course. And so I wasn't understanding what he was telling us, and I had no clue of the danger that he was in at the time. It was a week after he died before I saw his suicide note. The police had taken that, and it takes some time to get things like that back from them. One of the tragedies of losing a child is some of the things that are out of your control for a while. But when I saw his suicide note, marijuana killed my soul, plus ruined my brain, then I started believing him, and I started researching it. And the more I researched, the more I realized how wrong I had been in not paying attention to him, how he was on to something that apparently nobody else was. As I researched it, of course, I found the marijuana industry approach to it, that it's all well and good, and it'll be great if we can get rid of drug dealers and all this stuff. And they actually kind of drew me in for a little while. It it was a journey to learn about it, but early. One of the things I did was talk with a drug prevention organization. It's in my county here in Arizona, and their reaction more or less was, "Oh my God, I can't believe you walked in our door with this message. This is what we need to tell people. Will you speak at our state conference in the fall?" And I just had to laugh. I was, "What? Speak at a conference? You must be kidding. What kind of conference? How many people?" "Oh, 300 to 500 people." I go, "Oh my God, no, I can't." They said, we'll help you. And they did, and they mentored me, and they helped me become a speaker. So that's how I ended up here. The next slide, please. This is what I've learned along the way. When you stand with science-backed evidence, you stand in truth, and the truth does not mind being questioned. A lie does not like being challenged. It was an important step for me in learning to be comfortable in public speaking and public writing, as I'm on the side of truth, and that makes me feel good every single day. And the people that I work with, like all of you, you're some of my favorite people in the whole world, because we are all here banded together and speaking the truth. And we need to continue doing that. So next slide, I just have another comment or two, and then I'll turn this back to Corinne. But this is my son's actual suicide note. It's part of it. It's the end of it. It's what started me becoming a speaker. My son said, "I will only get worse. My soul is already dead. Marijuana killed my soul, plus ruined my brain. I'm doing everyone a favor." It took me some time to feel okay sharing that. It felt kind of personal and hurtful. I was a little afraid of doing that, but over time I've shared it more and more and more and more. I think it's important, and it's the most important element of my story and my son's story. So I have learned to share that every time I'm sharing in some way, even if I've boiled it down to a 1-minute thing I get to give in front of a legislature or something. I make sure I put that in there, because I have to share a secret with you. That very first conference that I did, I fretted over that, and I prepared for it, and I thought I couldn't do it by reading or using notes. So I just went up and talked for 20 minutes straight. And a friend told me afterwards, "You never said those words from his suicide note." She said, "That's the most important part of your message." But it was very successful when I did. The feedback I had after the conference is people heard me, not a professional speaker, but things coming from my heart. And even though I hadn't read his exact words, even though I hadn't gotten that what now is the core part of my message, even when that was missing, what just kind of spontaneously flowed through my mouth that day was people heard it and they understood it. And then people start asking me to give that presentation in different ways in different places, so, which was important in Arizona at the time. And I've had some opportunities that not everybody has. Arizona had ballot initiatives in 2016 and in 2020, which gave me ample opportunities to find places to share my message. Andy died in 2014, so it was during 2015 when I was really developing my ability to get to speak and to share this message. Next slide, please. Let's hear about Corinne.
Thank you, Sally. It's always so heartbreaking to hear your story, no matter how many times I hear it. So thank you for sharing that with us. Well, my story of speaking about dope began on the day of my daughter's funeral. I was approached by the clergy who asked me to speak, and he held my hand and he led me up to the podium, and I was completely unprepared and sobbing. He whispered in my ear, "God will give you the words." And as I tried to compose myself, I began to speak, not knowing what I would say. But my voice became clear and low, and I told everyone that Jennifer did not die in vain, and that I would do everything in my power to speak out to educate others so that no other families had to feel this unbearable pain. I remember saying the phrase, "I will work tirelessly." And soon I began to speak at over 100 schools for Donate Life because Jennifer was a donor. I talked about her selflessness even in death and made sure the message of drug-impaired driving was heard loud and clear to those students. Now I am with Parents Opposed to Pot, and we've created the project Jennifer's Messengers, sounding the alarm about marijuana-impaired driving dangers, and I am the director. Next slide, please. A brief story of what happened to Jennifer began on the night of July 24th of 2012. I woke up suddenly from a sound sleep with this terrible feeling of dread that something was really wrong. I thought it was just a bad dream for a while, and I tried really hard to fall back asleep, and I finally did, just thinking it was a dream. And then the next morning, first thing, 6 a.m., we were notified that my beautiful daughter was killed by an impaired driver. He was impaired on marijuana at the exact moment that I woke up that night before. Apparently, she was called to work as she made her way. This impaired man drove 82 miles an hour through a red light. And at that moment, he impacted my daughter. Her life came to a screeching halt. She never saw it coming. This picture was taken only 3 months before the crash, when she graduated with honors and was awarded the Student of the Year from her college. I felt proud of her accomplishments, but that was coupled with also a pride of the beautiful and loving daughter that she had become. She was amazing, and I so look forward to the future and all the events that were going to come in her life. My daughter's death was one of hundreds of 100% avoidable tragedies. Next slide. And this is Jennifer's Messengers, sounding the alarm about marijuana-impaired driving. Jennifer's Messengers was created to bring awareness to marijuana-impaired driving. Many marijuana users have no problem driving after use, and some even think they drive better, but nothing could be further from the truth. So please take a look at our website. It's jennifersmessengers.org, and join us on Facebook. Next slide, please.
So we are all connected in one way or another. Corinne and I are connected by the loss of our children, and that's pretty much the audience that we are expecting in this this effort by Every Brain Matters to talk with the people who have lost their children, either lost like we have, where we no longer get to hug them, or lost in the disease of addiction. I often think the years before my son's death were every bit as hard as the years after, and learning to live in grief. We're grieving when we are when our children are in that addiction, the disease that robs them of their insight, understanding that they have a disease and understanding they have to make serious changes to get better. We're all connected in that way. I know we work with some prevention organizations that some of them may not have that personal experience of having lost a child or even have one lost in addiction, though I have found that most people that work in prevention are there because they have experienced it. So when we go forward and we learn to share our testimonies and share our experiences, we know we have some commonalities. And when we're speaking to an audience or we're writing a piece that's going to become an opinion piece in a newspaper, or just something that's shared social media and Parents Opposed to Pot or Every Brain Matters, when we're doing those things, we do have these commonalities, and we know that audience, and we gear our speech to them. So keep this in mind as you develop what you want to tell to the public, that most of us have this commonality, that we care about our kids and our future generation. I have grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and I just looking out into their future, I'm very afraid for them. And so I think usually when we're speaking to our audiences, we're speaking to people that are concerned. Next slide, and I'll turn this back to Corinne.
Thank you, Sally. You make some very excellent points. And what we have here is just what you see, a simple start. Your outline should contain before, during, and after event. And try to keep it simple at the start, and add to it as time goes on, because you'll start to remember things that will become very pertinent. Just like her letter and many things for me. I wrote a piece recently called "She's Gone and She's Not Coming Back" about an incident I had at our mailbox here. I didn't remember that for many years. So these things come up, and you can add them to your speech. You can add your feelings. You can add what other people said to you that influence you. You'll find that this is a process, and it's something that evolves. It's not something that you'll just sit down and write and it's done. And speaking gave me a purpose, which is very important to me, because they say that that's the last stage of grief. And it did help me tremendously to start speaking and doing something in my daughter's name. There are many ways to contribute also to educating on the harms of marijuana, but our stories are very powerful. But there are other ways in which, if you're not comfortable with writing your story, there are other ways of doing it. Next slide, please. Sally?
I need to say that I've had incredible personal growth through this process. I think I am 72 years old right now, so I was about 65 when my son died, and I thought I was just a retiree, and I was just going to play the rest of my life, and wasn't anticipating going into sometimes very overwhelming and full-time work on the outreach I try to do in writing and speaking. So I've grown from this, and all of you who are so much younger than I am, I could tell you, you know what, boy, life doesn't stop at all. You can just keep growing and growing and growing, and it's fun. And I'm glad I get to do this. Wish the subject matter was a little different, but like I mentioned before, along the way, I have met some of the most incredible, caring people, and it's been so enriching for my life. So we use many different elements or tools that help us cope with tragedy and disappointment. We should share our secrets to help others. And that's one of my greatest goals here is that, oh, I met Aubrey several years ago and I saw in Aubrey, here's a lady that can do so much. So I have enjoyed making it a business of knowing her and getting to know her closely. And fortunate enough, pre-COVID, we met at several events personally, and I've met Corinne personally, and I look forward to meeting Bronwyn Skinner personally one of these days. But these we share. I've learned from Corinne, I've learned from Aubrey, I learned from everybody I meet, and I hope people learn from me too. And that's one of my goals, is to develop people to take my place in this fight, because I still may retire someday. Maybe, I don't know. I'm enjoying doing this so much that probably not. But, and I can probably never let it go that our message is way, way, way too important. And our opposition, the powerful marijuana industry that lies and deceives and distracts, how can I turn my back on them? I just have to keep speaking out. So we advise, try to examine the events and perhaps give some helpful tips to others about your experience in your writings. And that's what Corinne and I are doing today. Personally, I didn't think I was a writer. I can't, before I retired, I was a financial person. I didn't do much writing. I wrote reports and spreadsheets, you know. So I was kind of surprised when I have an idea and I just sit down at the computer and I just start typing something. It's like this thing came out and developed. It's like, well, I didn't even know I knew those words, and I didn't even know it just, there's something about the actual keyboard, or I know some people use pen and ink and paper or whatever feels good. It's very refreshing and amazing to see what develops. And whatever you write, of course, you can keep it personal and not share it with anybody until you're ready to do that. But we also have, I think, an important thing, and that's this big community of people that we can share these things with and say, hey, I wrote this, what do you think of it? Where do you see, you know, I mean, if we want to, it's so flexible. But what I urge anybody to do, if you're new at saying, how do I do this? How do I share this painful, awful, horrible story that I now have, is just sit down and start it and try it and see what happens, and ask for help if you want. Corinne has also done a lot of writing. I'll turn the next slide over to Corinne.
Thank you, Sally. You always give so much of yourself. It's amazing. What I've done here is I've just put a few simple things that helped me when I was writing my first draft. And there's something, you know, you have to keep in mind. This is your first draft, your very beginning. So what I put down here was speaking can be very helpful for the healing process. It helps us find new purpose, which I told you it's helped me a great deal with, and provides the listener with valuable information only someone who's had this life experience will know. Try not to limit yourself. You can always remove what you deem is not important or pertinent. Seek out objective feedback from people who would tell you the truth. And ultimately, it's your story, so make it yours. Speeches evolve over time. They do not have to be perfect the first time. You may even give a speech and you decide to change some things, but that doesn't make that speech not as good as the next one. You may have to take a day to recoup and gather your thoughts after speaking or writing about something that's so emotional and heartbreaking. I always have to take a couple days after I give a speech and tell my daughter's story and just be kind to myself. Take myself out to lunch, go get a pedicure, do something nice for myself, because it does take a lot out of you, but I know it's worth it. You may want to share your speech with our group, but you don't have to. All feedback will come directly to your email. You can take it and evaluate it and leave it. You don't have to necessarily take what we say. We have an option to meet once a month to keep developing our presentation and talk more about how you can get started speaking in your area and how to become a member of our Speakers Bureau. I found that a little difficult at first to find a venue to start speaking, but once I did, then other opportunities kept coming about. So it's really just getting started, and the rest of it will come a lot more easier to you. Next speech, please. I mean, next speech. Next slide, please. So many times a symbol has entered my life. The last thing I ever did with my daughter was to go shopping in a quaint little town in Ohio with we went into an art shop. She bought a picture of a lotus for her home, and I loved it, and it now resides with me. Then someone gave me a gift of a flower, and it was a lotus. It was a beautiful little box with a lotus painted on it. Then the final indication came when I met this woman who had lost both of her parents in a car crash. We started a safe driving coalition here in our county of Delaware. And she posted this beautiful picture of a lily on Facebook. And that's when I started doing a little research about lilies. And it's very interesting. They are a sign of hope and promise for the new day. And so we adopted that as our logo, as a meaningful symbol of what we're all about, using our stories to help other people and not let this happen to another family. Next slide, please.
Before I speak to this slide, I'd like to mention a couple of things that I do. You might notice my button, my anti-marijuana plant leaf button that has been worn and shared widely at drug conferences. To me, that's something just I'm proud to wear. When I speak, I always wear this necklace, which is a heart with my son Andy's thumbprint on the heart. It was a gift from my daughter, and it's my way of having Andy with me. I usually almost always wear a long keychain with Andy's Army dog tag on it. I can't find it this morning, but I know I'll find it. For some reason, it's hidden from me today. But those are important to me. And as I speak, I can grab them, I can hold them. I usually point them out, especially when my audience is teenage kids, because they seem to be very attracted to Army dog tags for some reason. And behind me on my wall in my home office, you see my portrait of Andy. And during the years he was in the Army, when he was between 18 and 21 years old, my sister, who was a quilter, quilted these flags behind me. So I've had my office decorated in red, white, and blue ever since Andy was in the Army. He was quite a patriot, and I am too. So I wanted to comment on that, mention that, like Corinne said, the kind of symbols or things you can hang on to, the tangible things are very helpful and ground us and help us feel comfortable in public speaking. And on this slide, and that beautiful picture of Corinne's daughter Jennifer's gravesite. I go to my son's gravesite also. It's not as pretty. It's in a big national cemetery for veterans. But I take flowers there too. And oddly enough, my flower symbol is lily also. It's the peace lily. Sandy had a big peace lily plant that had been given to him as a friend, and he loved that. In his later years, when he was losing control of himself, he could care for plants, and he could make plants thrive, plants and animals. He had pets, he had guinea pigs, he had white rats, he had koi, and he had a beautiful dog that he loved. His dog, I'm happy to say, did live a nice, long, peaceful life with friends after Andy was gone, and died of old age. And I like to think of my son being in heaven with this dog now. So things like that I have found as I speak and share with other people that they resonate with audiences. I use a PowerPoint slideshow that has Andy's dog in there, the dog that he told me saved his life from suicide several times.
Wow.
In your audience, you may have lots and lots and lots of pet lovers. So things like that in your stories tend to develop over time. The points on here, if someone has a tragic story in their life, and this is why we're speaking to you today, it's so important to share these. We know, absolutely know, there are hundreds, thousands of stories out there, but we don't hear many of them. There aren't a lot of people like Corinne and myself that come out and speak, real deep details about losing our children, because it's difficult. We both were in positions where somehow the atmosphere lended itself to help us learn to develop. And then we found each other, and we found other people like Bronwyn and Aubrey and Every Brain Matters and Parents Opposed to Pot and Smart Approaches to Marijuana, the groups that helped us just feel supported and grounded. But so you personally, if you're listening to us today and you have a new situation, you're still in that stage where your heart is just raw and it's hard and everything's hard. Think about these things you may not want to share at this time, not right now. There may be a time in the future when sharing is right for you, and we want to help you at that point. It's always good to be prepared and to write your story without any pressure or stress. Just begin gathering your thoughts and what you might be able to do. Writing early helps you remember the events better and your feelings at that time. Some fade, thankfully. The painful ones do fade. Grief does become not necessarily easier, but we just become more practiced at it and better at it, and find the ways to make it work. The next slide going forward, Corinne, will you please take that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I just really want to thank everyone for listening to our presentation today. We hope that what we have told you today, that you have found encouraging and helpful. We want you to know that we're here to support you, just like Sally said. We can take telephone calls, we can help you with your speech, but what we really like to do in the future is have another follow-up going forward. Sally, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we're at this point, we're suggesting perhaps someone who wants to develop a public presentation, a verbal presentation that do it for us here on a Zoom meeting like this, maybe a month from now, or we'll see what unfolds, but someone who would like to practice doing a presentation, whether or not it's with slides. It doesn't have to be. Not everyone
Right.
has the technology or the skills, to create a PowerPoint presentation. We could help with that in the future if someone would like help. We're looking for people willing to share a story, and we want to help you with our expertise in developing that, how you might develop it. Other things we could help with in the future is, well, how do you find someone to listen to you? Where do you find an audience? One of the things I found very necessary to develop, and I think Corinne has done this too, is we've had invitations to give a presentation to a legislature or to a legislative committee. And I was flown out to South Carolina to present to a committee in their legislature, and I was given 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I learned a lot because I've been not invited in, but I found an opportunity to testify in Arizona. And I was given 3 minutes. And then by the time I got there, the room was so crowded, and this is pretty typical because the pro-marijuana people come in and overwhelm. And then they have so many speakers, they have to limit us all to 2 minutes or even 1 minute. So someone having a desire to make a difference in future laws and speak to legislatures need to be prepared with a 1 minute speech, a 2 minute, a 3 minute, a 5 minute, a 10 minute. There are different purposes to our speaking, but we can help with things like that. We've done this, and we want to help, and we want more voices. So when you're ready, we'd like to hear from others about what can we help you with, and we'll develop that help. And we can speak with you, work with you personally and privately, or if someone would like a little tiny audience like this, come on Zoom, we'll help you give one, and make it easy because we're a friendly audience.
Very friendly. Last slide. Sally, I think this is yours.
Have I been speaking to this? Just
Yes.
that if if someone's ready, please let us know, and we'll help you. You don't have to do that. Just come to the next meeting and listen to whoever else would like to speak. And if we don't have someone coming and saying, I want to prepare something and give it to this little audience, Corinne and I'll just come back and we'll talk a little more about our personal experiences, or give you encapsulate the kind of speech that we do and show you what it. Give us feedback and we'll develop this program from here.
Well, I think we are about done. I thank everybody here for coming to our little seminar that we have today. We hope that it's helped you a little bit. And like I said, and what Sally said, we're here to support you and help in any way we can. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much.